We all settled? Good morning. Hello, everybody. Hi, my name's Lauren. I have a grand title of design psychologist, which essentially means that I started my career in psychology before training as a designer. And about 5 years ago, I started my studio called Behaviour. I left my job in the design sphere and wrote a big behaviour on a piece of paper followed by a question mark. How do we start designing people's behaviour, and how do I combine all this insight that I have from the psychological sphere and applying it to the digital products and services that we design for others? So we think, research, design and teach and change people's behaviour for the better. So we've worked with a plethora of companies, all the way up from governmental level, all the way up to digital products and services, that we're affecting positive change in other people through the designs that we're doing. And through all of this work as working as a designer and teaching other designers, you come to realize this one big thing. Your designer's eye is your inner psychologist. It's all the years you've spent honing and learning and trial and erroring, experimenting to figure out how the things that we're designing affect what we want in the client brief. So you're already ahead of the game. It's your inner psychologist that knows that when you're designing for a kindergarten and you're trying to be friendly and playful, you'd use a typeface like this, as opposed to a typeface like this. Very same content, completely different sentiment. So your psychologist is being driven by your understanding of other people, that inherent understanding that we have because we are all human. Also, we couple it with neuroscience and behavioral economics. So these three basically form a toolkit in a sector that we use called behavioral design. So neuroscience is how the brain is constructed, the limbic system, how it pays attention, visual perception, all of that kind of sphere. And behavioral economics is the value in which we place on the decisions that we're making. So, what is the value of science and design? Well, the first is we can use it to understand people. I'm talking about real understanding of people. Basically looking at, starting with people's decisions. What decisions are people making, how they're making, why are they not making them, and using all of this insight to break down how that framework is kind of constructed so that when we're designing, we can design for each column of influence. To craft people's decisions for the better. The next one is we can have a more informed design process by bringing in all this years of research from the behavioral sphere that academics have dedicated their lives to. It means that we can add one more stage to our research, design and validate cycle. We put insight here right at the start. And the main advantage of this is we're starting with what we're designing incredibly informed before we're even sitting down and looking at how to structure a project or even how to answer the brief. It means we can ask the right questions and bring this inherent understanding of why people are doing the thing that we're being briefed to solve, and also the outcome of what we're going to be working on. The next, and the big one, this is why everyone really likes it, is it's more persuasive. It takes this, as you know, when you're like designing and you just know, you have a feeling that something works and you're not really sure why. I think this is the right thing for this project, but you're left clueless with why. What it does is it answers why. It gives you the validation. And importantly, it changes I think to I know. I know this is why people are doing this. And people listen. Followed by because. Now, because is the most valuable word in a designer's vocab. It validates everything that you're doing, and people listen to because, especially when this little blank is theory, provable theory that's been replicated, applied to different constructs, and people listen. They like to get a hold of that pieces of paper. When you back your work with proven psychological theory, stakeholders listen. When you're trying to get a new team on board and they're still unsure and before kick-off, they listen. When you're trying to get more resources or more investment for a project, they listen. Also, if you're trying to get buy-in from a client that you know will work and suit their brand perfectly, but they're hesitant because it's in a new space, they listen. They like that assurance before we even start investing time and effort in what we're doing. Psychology is the inherent understanding between these two typefaces, and it's a principle called fluency. So fluency is the ability for our brain to match what we're seeing with the schemas of reference that we have. So in this case, this is processing fluency, which means that in the case of, I'm going to just go back, we know this is a friendly typeface. It's got round counters, it's really bubbly, there's no spikes, it's just really friendly. This is fluency. It matches with the schema of reference we have in our heads for play and for fun, as opposed to the one which is scary and you would never put in a kindergarten. So what we're doing is we're shifting, and we're starting to shift from the design of things, how things look and how they principally function. And we've seen this shift happening because service design and UX and product and all these new spheres have been emerging over the last 10 years. So we're shifting from the physical design of something to the design of outcomes. The effect that our designs are having on the people that we're designing for them. And this is a really important shift, and it means that we need to start investing in the real understanding of people as who they are. Who are the people at the center of the products that we're interacting with and we're designing for? How are they thinking? How are their brains structured? What beliefs and emotions are they interplaying when they're trying to interact with the product that you're designing? So this first sphere is the interface, the physical thing that we're designing to initiate behavior in someone else. The design of the button, the layout of an app. The next is the interaction, so the expected interaction that we want when we're designing for people. So this interaction, if you're designing a health app, how do we then keep the behavior going outside of the health app so that they keep making positive choices when the app is no longer there? Which leads to behavior. Are they doing the thing we expect them to, or are they doing the complete opposite? Behavior has so many different spheres, but if you start viewing behavior as the causation of these steps, it's a little easier to start getting your head around. And the last, of course, is society, which is a really important transition, and it's something that we're all kind of struggling with as a design community. The importance that the things that we're doing and the technology that we're designing has on culture and community and the people around us. Yeah, especially with some of the political discourse that we're seeing at the moment due to technology. So what we need to do is start exploring behavior outside of our designs, kind of like looking about what are the beliefs of people, what are their emotional states, do they have the attention to deal with what we're expecting them to, can they hear what we're trying to do, can they see what they're trying to do, but also like the wider social sphere. So what communities are they in, how is that informing their behavior? And then again out to society, the kind of regulations that we're controlling for other people, and how does that inform their behavior? And all of these, of course, affect the design outcome, and they can be decoded in psychology. Academics have been researching this stuff for about 80 years, which means there's a complete wealth of information here, and yet all of you are designing products that affect change and behavior of people here, and it's time that we start pinching some of this insight and bringing it so that when we're designing, we can design better and more informed and have a positive effect on people's behavior. So what we're looking at really is gaps. Have you ever launched a product feature that user research said that they wanted and then they never used it? Anyone? Have you launched a product and expected one behavior and they did the complete opposite? Yeah, this is gaps, and gaps are my candy. This is what we specialize in, because what you're looking for with gaps is that opportunity of why something didn't happen when something did. And that is usually behavior. So something is happening there that is not accountable to investments and resources and finance and the design of things. So this is behavior. So it's a difference between intended behavior and actual behavior. And they're very different. I'll break this down in a bit. And it's a gap in expected user data and actual user data. What actually emerges when people start using the things that we're designing, and we scratch our heads because we can't really figure out why it happened when it did happen. So these gaps emerge from misunderstanding of this design outcome. If you're doing user testing, you're doing it in a controlled environment, and what you haven't really accounted for is that additional sphere of context, how people are responding outside of interacting with the interface. And we have to design for that, because we all live in chaotic worlds, and we don't live in these isolated little bubbles of when we're in the research lab. And that one thing, if I want you to take away today, is this: humans are irrational. If we're starting to design outcomes, we need to realize this. We sense this in ourselves. We make irrational decisions all the time. Like, we don't save enough for retirement. We go to the gym and on the way back pop into McDonald's because we feel like we're treating ourselves. Doesn't make any sense. And the thing is, if we succumb to these own irrationality, what's happening for the people that we're designing for? So, okay, let's lighten the mood a little bit instead of me just preaching at you. And let's look at optical illusions as a visual metaphor for irrationality. Let's see if the video works. So this cool little dino follows you around the room. Eye in eye, gaze in gaze. It's a really convincing application of augmented reality. Or is it? Yeah, so this is actually one of the more successful applications of an optical illusion, and it plays off our brain's ability or misability to read faces in patterns, and also plays on our sense of perception and perspective. I mean, the face is actually concave, so what's happening is there's gaps in the knowledge and our brain is just making the rest up. It's the difference between perceivable reality and actual reality, and this is that's the difference between the outcomes I was saying. The other thing is, I'm just going to play it again. I've told you this, and you still see it. Which is terrifying. Which means that our irrationality is sustainable, it's predictable, it's concise, and yeah, this happens all the time. This is why you get user testing back and you think, I don't understand how they've got where they've got to. It's because they're probably succumbing to some point of irrationality. So let's look at some examples applied to kind of the problems that we're solving as designers. So what I want you to do is do a little mental task. The city has approached you as a studio, you know, a little studio of 2 or 3 in your row. And most cities have a pickpocketing problem. And what I want you to do is just do a quick mental accounting to try and think how you would solve this, what kind of things that you'd recommend to people. You might have thought, well, we'll just put some signs up and say, tell people about the problem, educate them. Hey, by the way, pickpockets kind of function in this area. And you wouldn't be alone. That's usually the go-to in lots of different cities. Particularly London. I saw some in the airport as I was coming through. It's everywhere, these signs. Be careful, pickpocketing. Now, question. Show of hands. What do you think happened to pickpocketing after the signs were implemented in the City of London? Did it go up? Did it stay the same or go down? So it went up, stay the same, down. Token 1, I like that. Okay, cool. So let's find out. Obviously, pickpocketing went up. But why? Why did it go up? Well, it's this thing called anti-modeling, which is a fancy way of saying they've misunderstood the behavior that's about to happen afterwards. So they've got the cue to act, the sign. Hey, by the way, there's a pickpocketing problem. With the intended outcome that people will go, okay, cool, I'll look out for the pickpockets and make sure that I'm safe. But actually what you do is, what's the first thing when you see a sign telling you there's pickpockets? Quickly see where my phone is, yep, see where my wallet is, yep. So basically what you're doing is, you're advertising to a pickpocket where your most valuable products are. If you're a pickpocketer, stand under one of these signs, because it's like a gift. Should we do one more? Student drinking. Now, you know, student drinking used to be a real problem. All students went to uni and had lots of fun, but in recent years they don't. So this study was from about 9 years ago. So student drinking used to be a problem on campus. So how would we address this in the student body? How would we try and reduce the amount of beers that people are drinking at the SU? Well, one solution was to basically survey all the students. They've been there for a month in, they're doing their kind of checkup, how's it all going, and they're asking them about their drinking. And they're surveying them. With the idea that once they've surveyed them, they'll send out an update just telling everyone what the drinking habits is amongst the student body so that you're educating people about problem drinking and giving them the authority to then change their behaviour for the positive. Now, question. What happened that you're kind of like starting to catch on now? So, it went up, stayed the same, or went down? Went up, stayed the same, and down. Cool, yeah, most people are starting to catch on. It actually went up. Why? Why did it go up? It makes sense, right? We give people the information. It's this thing called default to the social norm. So as humans, we are incredibly social animals. All the people around us inform and influence our behaviour. The person to the left and right of you is informing your behaviour right now. The collective group of you, you know that you should sit here in silence and listen to me talking at you. That's a collective shared understanding due to a social norm. And what you do is, when you say to students, hey, by the way, you were in like below 50% on drinking, they go, oh, great. I can drink another 4 pints this week and I'm still less than the problem drinker. You give people the ceiling and they go, oh, sweet, that's what I should drink towards. So the problem is, all of this makes perfect sense, right? We've got the problem, usually we tell people about it and we educate people about it, hoping that it will inform them and they make decisions to the positive and they take ownership and they change their behaviour. It's common sense. Common sense is a designer's nemesis. It's the difference between intended and actual behaviour. So principally, we design for how we think people will act, as opposed to how they actually act. So, I'd kind of like to reflect as we're coming towards the end. Psychology is therefore a designer's new superpower because, 1, makes you better at what you're already doing. It skills you up and gives you that narrative to take into those pitch meetings, to validate your decisions and validate the direction that you're trying to go. It informs your design process. I mean, you can start in a better place, saving time and resources and getting a better outcome at the end of it. 2, we can understand the wider impact of what we design. And this one's really important at the moment. We can no longer be naive to the Facebook implications. We have to understand that what we're designing can have a negative effect on people, and especially the spheres further out, propagating all the way up to society. It's kind of terrifying when you think that the products that we're designing and all the small little design choices we make every day can have such a global impact on what we're trying to do as the human race. Just let you think about that one for a second. And finally, avoid these unwanted outcomes when we accidentally make people do more of the behaviour that we're actually trying to stop. And this happens all the time. Usually it gets caught in user research, but sometimes it just doesn't. And it's only when it's out in the wider world, in the context of where people are and when they're being influenced by all the stuff that influences our behaviour, and it's in the real world as opposed to the designed and fabricated world. And that's it. So, questions, whap them to me. Here's my email. Also, you can follow us on social. Now, I've started sharing some psychological principles on our Instagram with how might we questions. They're called like nudgets. We've got them, we're starting to give them out. I also have some that I've brought today, but I've only got 10. So the first 10 people that come talk to me can get one. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.